morning and good evening, good afternoon to wherever you are. I know it's all around the globe right now, but great to have this presentation and this panel session with you. I'll introduce Nick and Tejas shortly, but we have a great panel today. And I heard a lot of things about automation and employee engagement in the previous chat. So I think some of the things we'll talk during this session will be going a little bit more deeper into actual examples of how you could do some of these things and where the industry problems are and what platforms are coming out there to help us solve some of these issues. So I hope my screen is visible. I just want to make sure that
it's there. We see it.
The slides. Okay,
we can see it.
Great. And it's in full screen?
Yep. Sure is.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
So yeah, let me just start with a quick background of what we are trying to cover. If some of you looked at our synopsis, we all know that automation industry is growing like crazy, and Gartner is estimating like it'll reach 600 billion worldwide in this year. However, so how is automation and hyper automation impacting HRTech or HR as such? I think that's pretty much our focus today. It's probably touching everybody in all kinds of ways, but specifically in HR, that's what we are going to focus on. And we'll talk about the various use cases within HR that one needs to automate or think about automation from an employee engagement perspective. And since we have Nick and Tejas here, we'll specifically dive into how some of these automation platforms can help us in that whole acceleration of implementing automation, whether you are a vendor or whether you are an enterprise trying to leverage automation from an employee engagement perspective. So let me now welcome both Nick and Tejas here. Nicholas Anthony is the Director of Business Development at Workato, and Tejeswi Sreekantan, Director, Global SI Partnerships and Strategic Alliances at Yellow.ai. So welcome, Nick and Tejas. Nick, over to you if you would like to briefly introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Like Shrikant mentioned, my name's Nick. I've been with Workato now for a few years. I started off looking after SIs, or system integrators, strategic advisory firms, specifically with a focus around HR. If you think about Workato and what we do, we are an integration and automation platform. So our total addressable market is pretty far and wide. And one of the critical roles there with our customers is making sure that they're leveraging the platform in accordance with best practices. And with that, we need to partner with strategic advisories and SIs who know the domains of HR as well as marketing, finance, and so on and so forth. So been with the company now for 2 years, have pivoted, I guess, over the past 9 months to focus on our embedded business unit as opposed to our direct business unit. If you think about direct, right, this is where we are selling to an organization who, let's say, they have applicant tracking systems and human capital management systems, and they want to integrate the data between those systems and maybe automate their employee onboarding or offboarding experience. Whereas on the embedded side, we're partnering with B2B SaaS companies that are looking to extend integrations to their product for their end customers. So it's more like an OEM type of solution. So excited for the discussion today. My previous roles, have all been centered around HR or consulting. So hopefully I can bring something to the table today.
Hey, thanks, Nick. Look forward to your thoughts during this session. We have pretty interesting questions for you. Tejas, over to you if you can briefly introduce yourself.
Sure, Shrikant, thank you. And what a great audience. Thank you so much for inviting me to such a great platform, right? Really looking forward to share some of our experience. So I'm, as Shrikant mentioned, I head the global partnership for Yellow. So we are a conversational AI platform. And we started off as a platform which automates customer support. But we quickly saw across our large enterprises asking us the question saying, now you've helped us reduce costs, but can we look at conversational AI as an automation tool to improve efficiency, right, across HR, IT support, vendor management, any function that is within an organization which needs inter-team collaboration, which has dependency on multiple systems of record in the backend. For example, taking into account HR has your ticketing tools, your HRMS solution, your Outlook, your Active Directory. So your learning and development system. So multiple of these systems are today operating in silos. So using conversational AI, we are working as a communication middleware where we bring these silo systems together and be able to resolve issues for employees in real time. So that's what we've been doing. So we provide a total experience platform. We moved from being called a CX automation platform to a total experience platform, right? So automating business functions as well as customer support. So that's us. So I work with organizations like Harbinger, Accenture, IBM, TechM, Wipro. Today we have customers across 27 different countries. We've been in the business for 5 years. We've had some tremendous growth. Salesforce recently invested about 70 million in Yellow, being the first conversational AI platform where they've invested. Basically, they wanted to make their application conversation first, right? And I love what Mark says, if you don't make your applications conversational, then we'll perish, all right? So that's exactly what we want to bring in, add a conversational layer to your existing enterprise applications, right? So that's from me, but looking forward to some great questions lined up by Shrikant, so we can add some great experience there. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Tejas. Great to have you on this panel discussion. I'm sure your whole conversational AI will add new dimension to this conversation. So going to let's take a deeper dive into some of the HR problems that we are seeing. Starting with, I think, what is the biggest pain point today when it comes to that's plaguing HR leaders across the globe. And you can pull any report out there. We recently looked at the Brandon Hall report, which talked about HCM outlook for 2022. And across all sizes of organizations, across all globes, the number one problem was, how to retain employees. And because there is this huge resignation wave that's hitting industry after industry, it's also important to hire candidates at an equal pace, and it's a big challenge on both ways. And in both these situations, I think what is important is engagement, right? I mean, if you engage employees better, probably you'll be able to curb and retain more employees. And at the same time, if you're able to engage candidates better, they joining you or not backing out is going to be higher. So I think engagement is a very important lever when it comes to how HR would tackle this particular problem. But you cannot become an engaging organization when it comes to employees or candidates just out of the box. It's a strategy that you need to implement and you need to build on. So if you look at when it comes to engagement, there are multiple challenges that come in front of HR when they try to implement or change the engagement levels in the organization. First of all, it is the ecosystem, as we know, is quite diverse. Like even for a small organization which has about 10 to 100 employees, you are anyway dealing anywhere between 5 to 10 platforms, trying to manage your employees, do their performance, do the recruitment and so forth. So it's not in one system. You are all using different platforms, some niche platforms, some homegrown solutions, as well as some ready platforms. So the whole diversity of software that one is using is pretty high. And now I think to add to the problem, the workforce is not in one place. Every organization is dealing with a hybrid workforce. So therefore, there is disengagement at all levels. And to tackle this further, HR is also doesn't have the resources to do and improve engagement on a one-on-one basis or a group-by-group basis. Their SLAs are increasing, and the complexity of the workflows is just just getting more and more difficult as you are bringing more systems in the workplace. So in that context, we thought we should talk about hyperautomation and how it can help. And that's where I would want to pose this first question to both our panelists, starting with Nick, as to how can automation help? I mean, we've seen the problems and recent problems that HR tech leaders are facing. And what is your view based on building a platform, and how do you see it being helpful?
No, it's a great question. I mean, it's a pretty critical one, especially with this the Great Resignation wave that we're, I think, all experiencing. I think there's probably a few big areas where automation is making a pretty sizable impact. The first one is really in terms of employee experience. I think this is probably the big ticket item, or the big takeaway from the discussion today. If you think, especially at the front end of an employee's life cycle, going from the recruitment phase, okay, we've just signed an agreement, an employment agreement with a new organization, really excited to get going. It's a critical time during that employee's life cycle at the organization. And those first 90 days with that onboarding experience is really kind of their first foray, or their first impression as to what they should expect from an employee experience perspective with that company moving forward. So we're seeing that, there are a couple of things. First off, there are many repeatable processes that go unautomated, and that's a shame. It really does kind of shore up a resource's time, right? When they can either spend their first couple of weeks trying to knock on IT's door to get provisioned with the right assets or the right software, or they can really hit the ground running, in their first few days at the organization. I would say like another, bucket here that's really important from the company's perspective, as well as a compliance one, is around privacy. So I think about my time in a previous role, a previous organization, where all of our processes were manual. And given that HR data is very often sensitive PII data, there's a pretty high risk of spillage and leaking that data in a way that's less than ideal. So I've been a part of those manual processes where you're literally, you've got people's critical information, birth certificates, social security numbers, medical information in an envelope, and you're passing them from one desk to another as they're getting onboarded into the organization. Now, that was many years ago. But automation, it kind of ring fences how far that or how wide that data can go, keeping it in-house in a platform that is logically isolated, or is leveraging encryption technologies, or obfuscating and masking that data will ensure that that company is minimizing the risk of exposure of PII. I think there's also this bucket of company utility, right? That I think at the end of the day, it turns into a question of P&L. and how quickly can you get those resources onboarded and actually hitting the ground running in their new jobs. I've been part of organizations where the onboarding experience took upwards of 60 days, right? I was still knocking on the door of IT trying to get provisioned with the right assets or the right level of access to software just to be able to perform the duties of my role. Whereas automation, right, they can certainly shore that up and shorten that life cycle. Yeah, I guess I'll take a quick pause there and let our other panelists respond.
Hey, thanks, Nick, for sharing your views on how automation could help. Tejas, your views based on your experience, designing the Yellow platform and also taking it to market.
Yeah, Shrikant, I think I have to go with Nick, right? What he mentioned about employee engagement. Nick mentioned about the onboarding process, right? So what we saw, especially in the region of around Europe, India, Southeast Asia, we saw that even before onboarding, right, the experience that you provide to your candidate, even before they join the organization, is absolutely important, right? So minus 60 days of onboarding, right, for lack of term. So during that period, a potential employee is looking at what is the culture within the organization, what are some of the process that they have to go through the interview process, right? And what kind of even basic things like when is my next interview scheduled? Did I make it to the next level? All right. What was the feedback on the current interview that I had gone through? So these kind of information is absolutely not possible with the existing system that you have. And you've got to do all these activities manually. And with the amount of talent that large enterprises are looking to onboard today, doing that on a one-to-one basis is absolutely impossible, right? So the only way to look at this problem statement is how can I replicate this through automation, right? Essentially, so today we have solution which kind of send updates, which is directly integrated with your HRMS system, right? And it can send you updates on when is your next meeting scheduled. Are you okay with the schedule? Do you want to reschedule this meeting? These are the kind of information that you've got to carry yourself with. What is the directions to the meeting location? And who are you meeting, right? Information about who are you meeting. And during this whole period before you're chosen as a chosen candidate, enabling them about what the culture is about, what is the role about. You can probably share some interactive videos, information about the work culture. So these kind of things really, candidates really appreciate that. While you're selecting your candidates, when you screen some of these resumes, you spend a lot of time selecting those top 5 candidates, right? So you've already invested time, and now if you don't handle it sensitively until you kind of get the right candidate, I think you're leaving a lot of good candidates on the table. So through automation, you're able to keep them updated, keep them posted about how they're progressing. And once they're hired, there's a lot of information, like Nick mentioned, getting access to the right hardware, access to the right applications, even getting access to the right groups within the organization, right? You have groups, developer groups, you have, say, even a gaming group, just to get yourself kind of ingrained within the organization, right? So bots and automation can be a great enabler in seamlessly onboarding a candidate, making them feel at home. And all this is done remotely, right? That is more important, because when you're onboarding a candidate remotely, these things take a lot of precedence, right? These small things do matter to employees. So yeah, I feel that there is absolute requirement for automation. So it's just that what is the journey you want to take? Where do you want to start off with is the question they've got to ask. So we've moved beyond that journey of should we automate, right?
Yeah, makes sense. And I think both of you bring out great points. And this one to many, like you cannot create an experience for only one individual and have that best experience, but for every individual in the company as well as in who is interacting with your company, if you have an automated solution, chances are you will relay as much information as possible and make them more engaged. So thanks for sharing that. And let's move into a little bit more deeper. Maybe we'll come back to the examples once again in terms of to share more emphasis on why automation is so important. So today what we are seeing in the industry is that every HR is my screen shared?
Yep.
I believe it is. Okay. Thank you. So every HR is trying to create a future of work sort of an experience, right? An experience both for candidates as well as for employees. That means in their line of business, in their size of the organization, the best possible tools they are bringing in and trying to create that experience. However, it's not future of work from a holistic perspective, but you need to go into each levels, like, and break it down area by area. Like, for example, you need to see what kind of automation or engagement experience you need during recruitment processes, during onboarding processes, then performance management, learning, and all others. So this is probably 3 or 4 different areas where we'll be talking today and touching with some examples. So just from our own experience in the last 5 years, in the recruitment space itself, we probably would have built about more than 500 or 600 integrations. So the demand for having a collective view to speed up the whole process of when it comes to recruitment or providing the candidates the best possible information about the company is so important and so critical that unless you do that in an automated way or an integrated way, you cannot achieve the results. And of course, when it comes to onboarding, performance, learning, there is a deep focus on personalization and communication. And the only way you could achieve some of this is probably doing the right kind of automation, doing the right kind of integration. So though at times it may feel like connecting systems by systems, but one needs to have an entire, whether it's a software vendor or whether it is a enterprise, if you're solving a future of work problem, automation and automation tools is probably at the heart of everything. So let me bring our panelists and ask them to share some more examples, maybe starting with Tejas, where you left off. This whole bot-based automation in engagement, do you have more examples for us in terms of how you have seen it improve or impact employee engagement or candidate engagement?
Sure. I think, again, great question here, Shrikant. So I'll probably walk you through an example, right? One of the implementations that we did. I think what we created, one of our customers said, we have this challenge with the onboarding. So we are unable to provide a personalized experience to our employees. And once onboarded, how do we take them through that journey from hire to retire, right? We created these virtual assistants. We sometimes call them digital twins of your HR, right? HR resources. So what this essentially does, picking up from the last conversation, is keeps the candidate updated about what is the next scheduled interviews, all that important information that goes into attending an interview, right? Post that, this virtual assistant is one connected across your HRMS, your ITSM ticketing tools like say ServiceNow, BMC Remedy, your Active Directory. So once the candidate is onboarded, once the profile is created in Active Directory, the digital assistant kind of understands this band level or this candidate aligned to this particular group needs a certain hardware access to certain applications, right? And also they need access to a certain groups, collaboration groups. The virtual assistant guides them through that process saying, hey, Shrikant, I see you're a part of this department. We've made your hardware available. You can pick it up at the kiosk. And this is how you've got to set up your hardware, right? And these are list of applications. You've got to register yourself on those, how to set up passwords. And then what are these collaboration groups that we have that could be aligned for you to perform at your best, right? So all of this information is provided, gives you details about their reporting manager. So pretty essentially, the platform can be a complete white slate. Organizations can add information that is required based on the persona of the user, right? And we don't want to make it very generic. So what we did is every information that we gave was completely closely knit with the Active Directory because Active Directory and the HRMS system knew this candidate or this employee is being assigned, say, for application development teams or sales operation teams, right? So we clearly know for this persona, what are some of the information that is required. If they're in sales, we can talk about what is the car leasing program, right? We can talk about what is their travel policies within the organization. So all of this information, which is already available in multiple systems in the backend, we are just serving the information through our virtual assistant on a one-to-one basis. So with that employee, especially this was for a French pharma organization, just in the first 3 months of implementation, this particular bot interacted, exchanged about 18,000 messages, which means 18,000 plus interactions have happened. And the employees rated out of 5, they rated this experience somewhere around 4.2 to 4.5. So I think that's where we truly brought in that employee experience. Yeah, so that's, I would like to take a pause, but yeah, back to you, Shrikant. That's experience.
Yeah, thanks, Tejas, for walking us through that entire workflow. That's that really builds a case for automation and for bot-based automation to improve engagement. Nick, coming to you, I think your platform, you have this embedded solution for vendors, and you also have this enterprise solution that you work directly with enterprises on their automation strategy. How are you seeing, some use cases where Workato's implementations have helped improve employee experience?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess I'll start with the latter one, which is kind of like the enterprise use cases. So I guess we're seeing kind of 5 main buckets of use cases. The first one would be around recruitment. So sample use cases there could be e-signature stages within a recruiting workflow. So moving those NDAs across the process, verification of employment eligibility, background checks, that sort of thing. And candidate nudging, right? So if it's been some time since we've heard from a candidate, gently nudging that candidate to see if they're still interested. If yes, just go ahead and respond to this email. If not, it'd be great if you could let us know that as well. The next bucket around employee lifecycle, which I think we've talked about a lot, which is around like employee onboarding, onboarding automation for maybe Active Directory and provisioning of licensing and hardware. So if you think about how this might look in the wild, it's as simple as these HRIS systems triggering off of a hire date, and then that excuse me, that triggers a workflow that then touches Jira and ServiceNow to provision the right assets, hardware, They'll ping maybe managers to go look through and see which SaaS products that they should be provisioning for their new employees and at what level of access. Very similar to our other panelists in a like a chatbot type of way. But not just onboarding, but also interdepartmental or cross org transfers or promotions. So automatically moving that individual from one stage to the next, and then automating the deprovisioning or the offboarding, right? So the hire to retire scenario. Going back to the security value proposition of automation, I recall once as a consultant, I won't say what company this was with. Once I rolled off or I was offboarded from my client, I still had access to their systems for the following 6 months. So if you think about, if I was a malicious actor, that would have given me a very large window of time to go and wreak havoc on some of those systems. I had access to very, very detailed and sensitive information. So the third bucket here, I would say, would be around HR operations. So things like automating PTO requests and approvals, expense reporting and approval workflows for getting reimbursed, or syncing worker populations with third-party, portal solutions. A fourth bucket here, I think, is comp and benefits. So automating the entire process of benefits file transformation and transmission between enterprise and third-party insurance carriers is an example. And then finally, I think just large big data, so HR data management and synchronization of HRIS data with cloud data warehouses like a Snowflake. If you're in the retail space, synchronization of retail employee data from Workday as an example to an omni-channel e-commerce solution like Salesforce for maybe online sales attribution. So maybe to make it a little bit more personal and how we're using it, I'll share a couple of examples. So we have some interesting bots. We dog food our own product quite often. And I'll put a quick dovetail here and just say that, it's critically important to understand what shouldn't be automated and what should not be automated. I think if you focus on the latter there for a second, one of the things that I've seen, create disaster in some instances is when processes are very poorly defined. And then we try to automate those processes, and trying to get out of that disaster, the havoc that wreaks, really, does incur some technical debt. So a quick plug here for Harbinger Systems. This is one of the reasons it's so critically important to have these solutions consultants who understand process and best practices, just to make sure that what you're automating is actually going to scale and not cause you more harm along the way. So anyways, going back to tangible examples. So we have this bot called a firefighter bot. So if you think about the old way of requesting provisioning for licensing for software as an example, or for different hardware assets, it's about going to IT and knocking on the door, and making requests. Once it's at IT, they'll have to provision or open up a ticket. Maybe it's Jira, excuse me, or maybe it's ServiceNow if it's hardware. We have a bot that we use internally, and it's a simple form fill. It's just a / command in Slack /firefighter bot enter, and it just opens up this Slack modal, which is essentially a form fill where you put all the information around the system that you're looking for access to, why you need it, and the date that you need it. And that triggers a workflow. It talks to all these different systems, whether it's ServiceNow or other systems, and then it'll populate within your manager's Slack. Well, for us, it's Slack. We can operate with other communication platforms, but right there where the employee is living and is working, spending the majority of their day in these communication platforms, it's popping up right there, their approvals requests, and those approvals can get approved or denied right there within the tool. So from an employee experience perspective, that makes the requesting or the provisioning much more streamlined, less of a headache, think about it. We also have this HR bot, which is pretty cool. This happened just yesterday, actually, where it sends notifications for all manner of things. But one instance is around annual training that's due or past due. The example that I got reminded of was to complete my company policy training on security and compliance. And one of the ways we kind of make it cute is let them know, is like, hey, you have 2 weeks until you're going to be past due. And at that time, you're going to be out of date. You're going to end up going on kind of the naughty list, right? Which is an alarm to me, be like, oh, I didn't have time to really look into my training record, right, that exists in another platform. It's not something that I, look at regularly, but because I had this automated pop-up and this modal that popped up letting me know this, I was able to get that training done and not wind up on any nasty grams. So going back to employee experience, it would have been a much more unpleasant experience had I just showed up on the naughty list or a nastygram email from our security team.
Thanks, Nick, for sharing that. So many examples in one go. And I think what my main takeaway from what you described and what Tejas also described was, automation is an employee, when he or she is interested in completing a work or a workflow, they are not always going to your app of choice. They want to do it wherever they are, however they are, and be reminded of different things at different times. And it's the job of the automation software or the workflow software to make sure that you cover all aspects, and that can only be done, cannot be done within a siloed application. It has to be implemented outside, and the network and the combinations have to be thought through so that you are giving the best chance to get the work done. So thanks for sharing that. And going a little deeper into what you just described, I thought by the time both of you would have talked about these examples, I can show the slide of this is one visualization of how one could overcome an engagement problem within an organization. So looking at recruitment, onboarding, performance, learning, offboarding, all those aspects. And within that also just thinking about one or two use cases where you could automate something, you could build a bot for that, or deliver that experience via a conversational interface. Now, this could be magnified, and for each areas you could create 10, 15, 20, 50 scenarios based on how complex your workflow is, or how large your workforce is, and so forth. So overall, the point that I wanted to make was, it's within these applications, the various applications that you use, you need automation. And across the whole future of work, automation and bot-based communication is the future in terms of if you are trying to implement a future of work solution for your organization. So I thought with the examples that we shared and this particular workflow that we have put together, we have conveyed the importance of why automation is essential when it comes to thinking about an engaging experience for candidates or employees. Now let's move on to the next aspect, like in terms of if we were to choose platforms and if we were to choose conversational interfaces, is it an easy choice, difficult choice? So what are the things one needs to worry about? So let's focus on the how part maybe for the next 5-10 minutes and help the audience with some of the questions that I have for both of you on that front. So firstly, when it comes to organizations, the way, based on our experience using some of these platforms and implementing solutions, there are multiple ways in which people are thinking about problems. One is, the application processes and structure that you have. And within that, are you looking at an integration problem? Are you looking at a workflow automation problem? Or you're looking at building something at scale using robotic process automation? And most of the times what we have observed is people are thinking about it in a siloed fashion. That means they are thinking about one problem at a time, or thinking about, one application connecting to another application at a time. So, but they're not thinking about an automation strategy when it comes to holistic strategy. And what our experience has been, even when we build just a single automation or a single integration or a single robotic process, is that actually the expectation is an n-fold automation. And to do that, or to do that sustainably and scalably, one needs to choose or leverage platforms. If you do just isolated pieces of implementations, you just get a momentary benefit, or a short-term benefit. But if you're looking at a long-term benefit, you need to think about automation as a complete strategy, and that's what brings us. So it's not just automation like how we are talking about; it's hyper automation, like automating at the next level. So on that context, and given that platforms is one of the big enablers for this, let me pose this question to Nick first, as to if people were to use platforms like Workato, are there things that you share between enterprises, between vendors, connectors, or any such things that makes it, or learnings that makes it easier for them to adopt a platform and choose a platform way of doing things?
No, that's a great question. I think one of the things that our founders wanted to do when they started looking at building out Workato was marry two things. Traditionally, integration and automation have been treated as their own types of tooling or their own silos, and there's been platforms that have evolved to solve each one of those areas. The integration being the value proposition for IT, so integrating these disparate siloed data systems to make sure that there was really one ecosystem of true data. And then on the automation side of the house, the value proposition was more for business stakeholders. I need to get more done in the less amount of time, and I don't want my resources doing robotic processes. What we have done is we've married both of those types of platforms under one roof, and we've created Workato, right? So, and in doing so, I think also what we realized is at the speed of business. So going back to the value proposition for the stakeholders, it's much more rapid than IT. Putting everything on IT is that's just not a viable solution for the speed of business. We need to find a way to scale out our ability to integrate and automate these processes in a much more agile way. And so looking at previous or Gen 1 or Gen 2 integration automation platforms, they're quite technical. The requirements that you need to be able to build a viable integration. I mean, you're looking at years of experience, developers, hard coders. It's a challenge. And so what we've done is we've effectively lowered the barrier of entry and said, hey, integrations don't need to be this difficult. We can build a platform that can bring down kind of the mainstays of a systems or objects or fields into this form of a data tree. And then we could make this a low code, no code type of scenario. And what that has done is it's lowered the barrier of entry to be able to create these highly functional, highly powerful integrations and automation down to, let's say, like a systems analyst or a systems admin. Like someone as an example for Salesforce, if they're a system admin, they can very easily leverage the platform to create very interesting integrations. But to get back to your question, how we share learnings, we think of our platform as a bit of the GitHub for integrations and automation. And so we have a community-based approach to how we tackle these things. And our customers and our partners today are building recipes. Now, recipe is just Workato speak for workflow. But let's say Acme company, they go out and they know that they have an employee onboarding experience that they want to automate. So they'll automate that, and then they will create that recipe or that workflow, those integration points, connectors, and they'll make that public in our community. And then TNT Corporation, then has a very similar use case, right? So they'll go into our community library, they might search for some of the systems or maybe a few keyword strokes of the type of, employee experience that they're looking to automate. And that might pop up something that's maybe at the 50%, 60% solution already. And then from there, it's just a matter of configuring their downstream systems or kind of tweaking here and there based off of their specific use case. So practically, that's how we kind of share learnings is having this community-based approach. We have a very tight and large community of developers on our platform today. Systematic is the name of that community. It's quite a few thousand folks at this point who are developers. Looks like we have a question in the chat here. I'll get to that in just a second. The second way is through thought leadership, right? We partner with our customers. It's not a very transactional type of engagement because our platform covers not just HR, but marketing and finance and everything else under the sun. The platform is pervasive. So once we land, we tend to expand and pervade across the organization's landscape. And with that, it's less of a transactional type of engagement with our customers. It's more of a partnership. And so we engage with those partners or those customers to build case studies and generate thought leadership that we then ship to market. We do that very often with our partners as well. I think we've done that a couple of times with Harbinger Group. So that'd be my response. It looks like we have a question here. Let me kind of get to this.
Yeah, really quickly. I think Katrina has a question. Can you duplicate and then edit an existing recipe into your account?
Yes. Yeah, it's very simple to do that. It's just a couple of clicks.
Great. Thanks. Tejas, over to you in terms of how are you, because you said that your global organization working with so many companies out there, how are you sharing or making it easier for people to use Yellow.ai?
Yeah. So Shrikant, what we saw is when across multiple implementation, the underlying use cases, the workflows were pretty much, I wouldn't say absolutely similar, but the underlying workflows remain the same. And some of the systems that we have to integrate in the backend also, we see those are quite repetitive, Workday, SuccessFactors, or Oracle Fusion HCM. So these are certain applications. Then your ticketing tools, Jira, you have your ServiceNow, you have BMC Remedy. So what we did as a platform is we have a marketplace. In the marketplace, we've already predefined some of the use cases, which can deflect in year one, 30% of those tickets coming into your HR operation, right? Because I always say, when you look at automation, you've got to see how are you going to measure your progress and saying, I've implemented automation and how is that impacting, right? So I always say, take a look at your ticket volume today, understand what are your top call drivers, take 30% of those top call drivers and then automate those functions first, right? So looking at those 30% of tickets, we see there are quite a few common use cases. So we have those use cases predefined in our platform. We have some of the HR experts within the organization who advise us on some of the standard practice or some of the best. So an enterprise can just go onto our marketplace, click on those reusable use cases and just move them to our bot studio. And our bot studio is completely, it's no code. So you can just make changes, and to make changes, you don't have to be someone from the IT department. HR department itself can look at what is the workflow and just right click and make a few changes, right? So that is in terms of workflows. There is a lot of repeatable workflows that can be used, so you're much faster to market. And what we've done as a platform is we also have integrated out of the box with some of the popular communication channels like Slack, it can be Microsoft Teams, it can be Skype, or external communication tools like WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, Apple Messenger, or Google Messenger, or a voice, right? So we have these channels built into the platform. So an enterprise doesn't have to kind of build a microsite or self-service portal and nudge their users to get used to a new interface. We can just have a bot on their existing communication channel. So that is one. And also what we do is to reduce the stress of training the bot by an enterprise, which you can ask any enterprise which tried this 3 years ago, would say, I definitely cannot invest that kind of time to train the bots, right? So we've pre-trained the bots. We call it a small talk library. So this small talk library is today, I mean, we go through about 4 billion conversations every quarter. So there's a lot of information, small talk, that is captured in the backend. That helps you kind of get the bot through the maturity curve pretty fast. So for example, if you say, I didn't carry my laptop today, right? So the bot should be intelligent enough to say that, hey, I empathize with that, but you can also access a cloud office system, right? And you just log in with your user ID and password, and you should be able to access your office suite of applications, right? So we've already figured out these, and we've also figured out integrations with most of the popular HRMS applications in the backend. As I mentioned, we have standard plugins into Active Directories, plugins into some of the authentication softwares that are available in the market. So pretty much enterprises today can say, when we conduct the workshop, say these are the top call drivers, and this is the standard operating procedure to resolve those issues. So once we have understanding of that, we can go ahead and replicate that as a automation workflow on our platform. And we can do it pretty quickly because in the platform, we provide them a sandbox environment, a staging environment, and a production environment. So you're able to experiment with the staging and sandbox environment or staging. You can just say, does this workflow work for you? And replicate those, right? What we advise our enterprise, as Nick mentioned, is to absolutely have a process in place, right? To have a thought process or rather than process, you should say to have a standard practice in place. That is important that the enterprise defines it. When they go with organizations like us, again, this is a great opportunity for enterprises to relook at their process, right? Saying, have I created a process that can be automated, that can run independently without a dependency on a few individuals within the team, right? So bringing those standard practice onto the automation platform, it just works, right? It just works, and it works to the power of N. It works tirelessly, and it can be made available on the medium that the users are comfortable and in the language that they're comfortable in. So yeah, so these are some of the things that we've already put in place. Yeah, it would be, yeah.
So thanks, Tejeswi. Sorry to rush you there, but I think we have only a couple of minutes. But yeah, I think I see that there's a lot within both the platforms that people, when they come onto the platform over the period, that they can leverage and make their whole automation and accelerate that faster, because the platform enables some of those things. I had a question about, on the budgeting side, because when it comes to automation platforms, when we position automation platforms for customers, whether it's HRTech vendors or enterprises, the budget is always a big question. So maybe either one of you, maybe Nick or Tejas, you have an answer for the audience of how do you estimate your automation budget?
That's a great question. I think it boils down to ROI, right? Like understanding the cost of doing nothing is almost more important. I would say it is more important than understanding what the cost of change or of automating is. We have various frameworks that we leverage today with our go-to-market teams. On the direct side, we have a way of kind of calculating what the cost of doing nothing is, what the cost of moving with various competitors, as well as what it will cost on Workato, and projected costs like 5-10 years down the road. On the embedded side, it's a slightly different model because it has to do with how the customer is looking to recuperate the return. So it's almost more like an alliance play with it when it's embedded, because we're partnering with these B2B SaaS companies, as their integration technology that they extend to their customers. It's pay to play. So there is the question of how do I recuperate returns? Oftentimes, folks might monetize based off of the integration to their end customer, or maybe it's based off of transaction volume with those end customers, or it may be that they're looking at reevaluating their unit economics for their existing products, or in some cases, the fact that they're losing market share to their competitors today because they don't have the right integration narrative. That's enough to move the needle, just to win more business. So it really does kind of.
Sorry, Nick. Sorry to break you there. I think we are out of time, and I'm getting messaged that our next session is on. But yeah, I'm sure there are many things to cover, and audience probably will have also more questions. So the primary takeaway that I want to tell everybody is, if you embark on your journey of hyper automation, and you can positively impact employee engagement or candidate engagement, you will be able to impact or ride the wave of the great resignation and overcome and come out on the positive side. So I would like to, we had a few more slides, but I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everyone for giving us this forum to share our thoughts. And thanks to Nick and Tejas for answering all these questions patiently and giving their great thoughts on how to embark on the automation journey and why it's so important. So thank you.
Yes,
on that note, over to Ryan.
Thank you so much, Shrikant. I really appreciate you manning this session, and thanks to Harbinger for supporting us. And Nicholas, of course, thank you from Workato, and of course, Tejas with Yellow.ai.